This is the Lucie Beatrix podcast. I'm a fashion model turned competitive athlete. I talk to the most hopeful, striving, and determined people that I can find. Welcome.
Yeah.
And today we have some very special guests from Brooklyn. They're actually my neighbors.
Yay.
And we're going to be talking about strength, both inner and outward strength, and conjuring motivation with fitness goals. So allow me to introduce my guests. We have Brendan McCarthy.
Hey.
And his lovely girlfriend, Jasmin.
Hey, team. How's it going?
And it's really fun because you guys are relatively new friends in my life. I met you in the last year as I've been transforming from a competitive runner to more competitive runner, I guess I should say. Because I met you at the very start of my marathon build-up at the Brooklyn Mile.
Right. Yeah.
Basically, there was this mile race down Kent Avenue that I wasn't running. I was just cheering. And I noticed you because you had your Whoop strap, which is like the wearable thing that gives you your health
All
data.
the cool kids are doing, yeah.
All the cool kids are doing it. Seriously. Yeah. And like, I get it. Like, I think it's like a really interesting piece of data to have, like just your heart rate and everything. But I noticed that. And then I also had noticed you because you run on the track a lot. And obviously, since the track is like my home, I was like, who is this guy? But yeah, so wait, why do you wear the Whoop strap? Or like, what do you get out of it? What's like the main drive behind wearing it?
Yeah, I've been wearing the Whoop for about 3 years at this point. And honestly, I think the best thing that it does is forces me to sleep better.
Really?
Like, even though their main thing is tracking your cumulative strain throughout the day as well as your recovery, I feel like the strain is often tied to my running training. Yeah. So I don't pay as much attention to that. I use it as a guide, but I'm not locked into like, well, I have to reduce my training or anything like that. It's really just like getting to bed on time, tracking my behaviors so that I'm maximizing my recovery. And, you know, some days are better than others, but it's that constant reminder when I wake up and I see that score to like, yeah, I'm glad I didn't have that extra drink. I'm glad I went to bed 30 minutes earlier or didn't, and I'm kicking myself more often. But
I totally relate. So I have the Aura ring, which I actually stopped wearing for a second because it's also a tracker a lot like Whoop, but it was giving me ortho insomnia or something where it's like I would see that I didn't sleep and I was like, well, that's going to ruin my day. And I'm like, wait, I don't need to know I didn't sleep, or like I don't need the more confirmation. Like, it was just giving me anxiety. But I think I'm going back and forth with it. Like, I do love it because it does give me that reinforcement that I should have a hard day. Like, if I see my scores like, oh, you did get like a good enough rest after that hard workout, now you can go out and attack with confidence that you're rested. But then, like, alternatively, if I know I have to do a hard workout and I didn't sleep very well, I like don't want to because I feel like it gives me that like.
Yeah, you have to take all the data with a grain of salt. I ran my 5K PR, at least my 5K PR, when it told me I had like a 53% recovery or something. And I was stressing that morning, like before the race, I was like letting it get to me a little bit. And then at a certain point, I was just like, shut up, it's race day, do your thing. Exactly. And I crushed, like I did very well in the race that day and I was able to trust my training and it paid off. But like, if I had been playing to that recovery score and like, well, I'll go out a little slow on the first mile and then I wouldn't have hit it, you know? So it's like at a certain point, I think for training it's good, but like everything, you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Totally. It's so funny you say that because the days leading up to the Chicago Marathon, which I actually haven't shot an episode here since the Chicago Marathon, where low key I ran a 2:44 marathon. Whatever, not a big deal.
Talk your shit.
Like, I had a moment and I'm excited about it. So I ran this 2:44 marathon, but the days leading up to it, my scores on my Aura ring were horrible. Like, it was like your body temperature is elevated, like needs more rest, like fitness decreasing, like everything was wrong. And I think it's because I was tapering and I was like stressed and stuff and like not sleeping. But it was telling me I was going to bomb. Like, I literally almost dropped out before the race even started because of my scores telling me how terribly I was going to do. And thank God I didn't, because I got out there and ran a 2:44. So it was like, it's funny to think that like these things are helpful in some ways, like with maybe trying to like, if you're going to not have the extra drink or something that's not applicable to me, but like gives you a sense of where you're at, but like you don't have to read into it too much. But
yeah, if I'm on one extreme or the other, like if I have a terrible recovery, I will take the day off.
Yeah.
And I think that's really valuable, knowing when to take time off.
Totally.
And also conversely, if I see a really high score, I'm like, all right, I'm going to hit a little hard today. It gives me a little extra confidence maybe. Anything in the middle, I'm just going to probably kind of do what I did and try to increase those behaviors that are going to pay off the next couple days.
That makes a lot of sense. So, so your background, for those who don't know, is running, and you're an athlete in that sphere, but you also are into strength, which is your world too. Like
Yes.
I consider you a strength or a fitness creator, not influencer,
Not
but like
influencer, I'm triggered.
but you kind of are an influencer. I mean, like
Yeah.
you have a really big following on TikTok, and it's all like your flexibility coaching and strength stuff. And like I showed your Instagram to my mom this morning because I was saying who I was having on the show, and she's like, "Wow, she's really strong and so pretty." And I was like, "It's funny how there's like this dichotomy of like the elegance mixed with like the serious strength, like CrossFit type stuff, don't usually go hand in hand. But I feel like you definitely embody this idea that like you can be extremely like elegant and graceful with strength together, like the two going together.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Tell your mom I love her.
But she was really amazed by it because like you do kind of blend the two. And I'm just curious, like, what is your background? How did you get into all of the strength fitness stuff?
Yeah, well, I think strength training, just like everybody who gets into strength training, it's like you kind of feel bad about yourself. You're like, oh, I really don't like how I look naked. I need to fix this. So you start strength training and hoping that you'll look better. And then I think as you go through your journey, you start to pick up on things that you really enjoy doing. You know, it's not just vanity about how you look, but it's also about how you feel and what like really gets you going, you know? So although I started with strength, I realized quickly that I have this affinity for flexibility training. And I worked with a contortionist for a year, and it was like game changing, you know, just really opened me up in ways that I had never been open before.
Interesting.
And it's now become like a pretty big cornerstone of my practice.
Wow. It's funny because I definitely got that from one of your TikToks, I think so I'm not flexible. I'm the least flexible person of all time, which I'm sure you hear people say that all the time, but it's kind of a cliche, but I feel like as a runner, my muscles are very tight. I like can barely, like when I've done training with Brendan, like I'm like, I can't do that because I can't, like I'm just tight, you know, but that's typical for runners. But I loved that one of your TikToks was talking about doing the splits and how I think you said something like it's just like I think you said you used to not be able to do it.
No, I couldn't do it. I really couldn't do it. And I remember when I first signed on with my contortion coach, I was like, okay, so how long until I could do the splits? We're working together. I'm obviously taking this seriously. How long? And she gave me this piece of advice, like, you know, if it's for you, it'll happen. And that was really nice.
That's interesting.
You know, but at the time, I was like, that's such an annoying answer. Just tell me how long, you know? But the idea of if it's something that really drives you and it makes you feel good, you'll keep doing it, you know? Because you'll always want to go back to that feeling. So
that's interesting.
I think that's really helped.
That is very applicable to running as well, because even for me, like, 3 years ago when I first was training for my very first marathon and the only other marathon that I've ever run, I was going to go after the same time that I did run in Chicago this time, but I wanted it too soon. Like it was there waiting for me. Like I wanted to be under 2:45, but it needed to happen at a different timeline. And it, like, yes, I had that potential, but it like needed to just come with a million things had to happen before I could actually do it. So I think it is interesting, like with any fitness goal, there might be that North Star goal of like a time or being able to do something like the splits or like deadlift a certain amount of weight, but it's going to come with the right pace that your body is going to, you can't force it prematurely. So like, I'm not going to do the splits tomorrow. Like, it's going to probably take a while. It's probably going to take as long as it took.
Do you want to do the split?
I keep thinking, like, I'm planting the seed. And I'm like, I think that that's something that like I do want for myself, but it's hard for running. Like, it's just the two, like, what's your opinion on that with like the mixing?
Brendan and I talk about this so often, really? Actually, just not, it's like, it's all important. I think strength, flexibility, running, like cardiovascular, the other one. No, but all three are important. And when you have these aggressive goals, like 2:45 under in a marathon, or trying to lift a certain amount of weight, or trying to hit a split, which is an aggressive flexibility goal, like it does require a lot of time. And how do you prioritize your training in a way that doesn't mess up or cut into your running time or like your strength training time, you know? Like,
yeah, and then if you're setting two goals on top of each other, it's even harder.
How many hours in a day? Like it's like full-time, like split and marathon training. Yeah, no,
but
totally.
they can complement each other. I think you just need to like have, this is my main priority, and this is, I'm also working on this, you know?
Totally.
I think for flexibility, what helped me, obviously, and I think you have a running coach. Am I right? Like you also have a coach. Like I had a flexibility coach, and I saw her once a week for 60 minutes. And I realized that I would take some of the stuff that we learned that was really difficult at the time, and I would do it on my own. But also, like, I had that 60 minutes with her, and that was like a big game changer.
I see.
You know, like there was like an accountability thing. Like I have to show up. I have to do this.
That makes sense. So having that mindset of like when you're coaching others, and you kind of I like this idea that like you can say to somebody like, yeah, I can help you get there. I feel this way with the athletes I coach, where it's like there's an athlete I'm coaching right now. He's above a 3-hour marathon, but I've said to him, because he does have this dream of being someday a sub 2:30 marathoner, and I've said to him like, that can happen, and there's no dream that's too big. And I want to be the coach that's telling people like, yeah, go big, like have a crazy ass goal, because it might take 7 years or 10 years even, but anything's possible. And like, so it's cool to like kind of have that demeanor as you're helping other people get closer to their dreams. And I think there's two kinds of people. There are a lot of people who just like want to, with coaching, with like people who want to just say, no, that's impossible. Like just stay in your, like, don't put too big of goals on yourself, because it's going to make you quit. But I think it's better to be on the other side of things and be like, no, shoot for the stars. And then hopefully you land kind of close to that somewhere. And yeah, I feel like that's definitely been like how I've applied that's the philosophy behind a lot of my own training and fitness stuff. But that said, like, what kind of things, what are you working on now? Like, so like, obviously you can do the splits, so, but like, what's something you're like, are you trying to like get
handstands, girl? Yeah. It's ghetto. It is really ghetto. Yeah. Honestly, it's so with stretching, maybe you can't do a split, but you feel in the moment, like I can feel the stretch. I can feel the work that's happening. When you kick up into a handstand, you just fall right back down. So it's like it's self-deprecating. It's honestly the most not stressful. It's the most annoying thing I've ever practiced. And with that, I'm learning a lot about myself. There's a lot of grace in how I talk to myself, the grace I give myself. Because, you know, I think sometimes in fitness, things have come very quickly. So I've been accustomed to like putting in 3 months, maybe 6 months of effort, hard effort, and really seeing some of these goals come to fruition. And it's not like that with handstands. But like, interesting. I still want to practice. So for me, you know, that like doing the splits for you is like handstands for me. I see. You know, and it seems so far away, but I do, very similar to you, have this similar mindset of like, dream big, you want to do the splits in the air, girl, go for it. But it does require that same level of effort, you know?
Yeah. And I think that speaks to the growth mindset, default, just growth mindset. And like, so in the car on the way here, we had a long Lyft ride. We were having a therapy session. And even though I'm in therapy, I constantly need to rely on everyone around me to like help fix my problems. But that all side note, we were talking about like just what we all consider ourselves experts in. And I had asked Jasmin, what do you consider like something that's like really in your wheelhouse? And her boyfriend said that you're really about growth mindset. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, I kind of think all three of us have that in common, where we're just very driven. And maybe that's why we kind of are like, we like each other. Like, I think there's something about that kind of personality that you can kind of tell people have that kind of like that vibe. But yeah, that said, I want to know, Brendan, what's on your radar for growth mindset, like goals? or things that you're like working on constantly? Because you're a runner, you're training, you know, you're getting yourself out there in that way. But then you also are a hustling New Yorker who came here with a dream. So how's that dream going? Like, what do you do outside of like, tell everyone like what you do?
Yeah, running is my love. And like, that is definitely something I'm all in on at this point. I'm going to run my first marathon next year. And I really just want to get fast. You know, like I took a long time off of running. And when I got back into it about 3 years ago, I really realized that it was like this fundamental part of my identity that I had just been missing for a very long time. And so that is definitely something that I love, that's both therapeutic for me. It's like this competitive outlet for me. It's community. It's all these things. But I also, you know, I'm a videographer, photographer by trade, and I found my way into shooting like fitness content in the city for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And through that, I've gotten to know some really amazing people in the fitness industry. And I also, yes, like
it is
like this beautiful girl right here.
So wait, how did you guys meet? Like, is that how you met, through fitness creating?
Yeah, I shoot a lot of events, and she was one of the trainers at this event. And
Wow. I know. It's funny. So Brendan and I talk a lot about the fitness community in New York. It is such a small world.
Yeah.
Everybody knows everybody. It's like more, it feels like we all went to college together or something. I didn't go to college, but it's like, feels like we're all in like, we have this like bond thing that like keeps us, it's just a very small world. And I think there's like a list of names. I think you probably distill it down to like 50 and be like, these are the people that are the fitness
people,
like makers and shakers or movers and shakers in that world in New York.
But there are also niches, right? Like I feel like the runners don't really cross over to the strength.
It's true.
But there are some hybrid people like that we see, but they're just obviously they have an affinity for one more than the other.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's
like
very funny.
I think Sasha is one of the few people who has a foot. Sasha Fierce.
Oh yeah, she's
has a foot in both worlds, you know. But there's not a lot of people, and because I have this like running background plus knowing people in fitness, and then having gotten really into strength training, particularly with kettlebells and this athletic performance take on it, like it's a really interesting intersection, because not a lot of people, it's like either all strength or all endurance.
Yeah.
And those two worlds don't cross over very much.
Well, it's so interesting because when I first met you, I was telling you about how I was getting into strength, because strength is my weakness. Like I'm a runner, I can run fast, but I'm not a strength person. Like I suck at strength. And I had tried, everyone had been telling me that I need to dip my toes into like more weightlifting and doing things like that. But it wasn't resonating with me, and I was doing a lot of like I went big, like I was doing like heavy lifting and stuff, and like learning how to deadlift and trying to do all the things I see people doing on Instagram, whatever. Which when we started talking, you told me about kettlebells and how to start using these kettlebells to improve running and improve the strength from the inside out, to be able to attack running where you need to be explosive, but you also need to have the balance and all the stuff that with kettlebells you can do in a very specific way. And so then, you know, over the past couple months, Brendan's been coaching me with kettlebells and actually like helping me with strength training and stuff. And it's been really mind blowing to see how different it is from the like really, really heavy lifting stuff that you see. But I'm just curious, like what I find you like obsessed with that stuff. Like you're definitely like, you know it inside out.
Oh, I love
feel like
it. And I love nerding out over it and like getting to know more about it and like cool new techniques that you can use and stuff. I find it fascinating.
What got you into the kettlebells for runner stuff specifically?
Yeah, I didn't even see it as a tool for running necessarily when I first started doing it. I think like a lot of people, kettlebells had a big surge in 2020 during the pandemic when dumbbells sold out all over the place. People couldn't get their hands on dumbbells anymore. They couldn't go to a gym that had a whole barbell set up. So what was left? People were picking up kettlebells and learning how to use them. And they had like a huge surge in popularity at that time. And I was lucky to know some trainers who had been working with them for a lot longer already and really specialized in knowing how to use this particular tool. Because that's all it is, right? At the end of the day is a tool. A barbell is a tool, a dumbbell is a tool, a kettlebell is a tool. But there's a certain way you can use a kettlebell that's different and in my mind more applicable to athletic performance, at least in this way. So anyways, I got a couple kettlebells. Shout out to Jimmy Martin at Burn for hooking that up. And then I just started messing around with them. Like during the pandemic, I had no idea how to use them. And it was fun. There was something about like throwing around this ball of iron that was just so much more exciting to me than like doing a dumbbell curl or something. You know, it was dynamic, and you could do all these different movements, and it used your whole body instead of like isolating a body part. So something about it resonated with me on like this fundamental level. And as I started working with these people who knew way more about it than I did, then I really started to see just how effective it can be for sports training, where you're not just trying to lift something really heavy. You want to be able to move the weight fast. You want to be able to move it through all these ranges of motion. You want to be able to move on one side of your body as opposed to just picking up something really heavy with both of your legs planted. Because as runners, we never have both feet on the ground at any point in time.
Yeah.
So there are just all these ways in which it just makes a lot more sense if you're going to try to add strength training into your routine as an endurance athlete.
It seems to me that like the thing that really resonated was like how functional the kettlebell stuff is, where it's like what you're saying, it's like complementing like the actual movement you're doing, or like helping you do that movement better, like taking a stride with more power. And that idea of functionality is really important to me in general with all fitness. Like functional, like, is this going to help me get to where I want to go versus aesthetics? Because I think a lot of times it's one or the other. Like what we were saying, like the way you got into it in the beginning is like, how's it going to make you look better?
Yeah.
I mean, even when I started running, I'm like, this is to stay in shape for like my modeling career, so it's definitely about like aesthetics in the beginning, but then now I like that, like a lot of like the fitness that I've like focused on with like running stuff, it's about how to do something better and be more like efficient at what I'm doing. But speaking on like aesthetics, Mrs. TikTok, so you know how a lot of people are not you. Like a lot of people aren't, like have this like glamorous, beautiful setup with like the white walls and like you're doing all these interesting, beautiful things and stuff. And they're literally just scrolling through. They're waking up, opening up TikTok and scrolling through and going, wow, like how can I be like her? Like she just seems like she's just like working out all day long and like lives like a healthy lifestyle. Like your life is fitness and stuff. And so, what do you think about like this idea of like social media both motivating people but can also be like hard? Because I mean, I'm just trying to like relate to those people, because I know I get it a lot too with running. They're like, how do you get this motivation? You just are running all day every day. And I'm like, actually, you see my run that I posted, but like you don't see the like 8 hours of procrastination of like, I don't really want to run, and like I feel like I'm in a rut and like, can I even do this? They don't see that stuff. So is there anything they don't see on yours that like...
Honestly, it's funny because I feel like for TikTok specifically, which I think I've posted more consistently on TikTok because I've gotten to show like the whole journey. Like what has really gone hot and viral for me on TikTok has always been like, this is where I started and this is where I am today. Like 1 year later, like it's a compilation of clips over a year of me being really bad and then really good. And like the whole TikTok community is just so nice. Everybody's like, go off girl, go. Yes. Like there's a lot of praise and like, oh, you inspired me. Like, thank you. Like that to me is like everything. So I think maybe for Instagram, it's more of this like carefully curated, like, oh, look at me doing a split. Because to be fair, we're all creators. We're all just trying to get in front of the right people. So in order to do that, we need to provide content and make content to what people like. And sometimes people really don't want to see you not doing the thing. People want to see impressive stuff. So you post this stuff that helps to feed this culture that both inspires and also makes you feel like poop when you can't do it.
Well, the relatability is huge, because I like to say to people, because like I feel like I was a beginner runner not that long ago, and I always say like 9-minute miles, that was what I did. I didn't
really
and I like, so I'll say that
God.
I'm like, people don't realize, like, because I was not an athlete, I was like chain smoking cigarettes and like I wasn't a runner. So I would like get out there and be like 1 mile down the West Side Highway at a 9-minute mile pace, felt crazy. I even have an ex-boyfriend who like, he ran into me on the street not that long ago. And I was like, yo, I'm a runner now. And he's like, I know, it doesn't make any sense. Cause he's like, remember we tried to go on a run once and you were like, this is way too hard. And it was not even a mile. He's like, I don't really, he think he was like just very confused by it. I'm like, but it's kind of interesting to have people like that in my life who were like, I remember when you didn't do this versus now, and like seeing the progress and like seeing when it wasn't natural, or like I think that's important for people to know.
No, none of it is natural.
No, it's it's like really putting in work and like, and even just having, I don't know, like having people will dismiss you if they think you were just born this way. If they're like, oh, she just can just do the splits. When if they see that you had this starting point that you couldn't do it, then they're like, well, maybe I could do it too. And then that instills the motivation. And I think that's really important for people to see. And that's the beauty of social media and sharing it, like saying, actually, you can do the thing
You can do it too.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking about like something that gets me motivated, a lot of I try to make content that motivates me in the sense that I really like voiceovers or audios from like someone saying something way smarter than I would have ever thought of on my own.
Yeah.
You know,
I like those too.
just like that stuff really, really hits. The 6-second audio sounds that it's like, yeah, well, confidence comes from your relationship with yourself. So when you show up for yourself, you have more confidence in this area because you're putting, you know, a bean in the bucket of like, yes, I can do this, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Changing your identity.
That got me all fired up. I'm like, yes, Lucie, you can do this. Yeah. No, it's true. So speaking of confidence, or I guess speaking of motivation, Brendan, you recently took a break from running for a good week. Talk about that.
Whole week, which for runners is crazy.
Kind of a lot.
Yeah.
No judgment. No, I was like,
It's like, can I even call myself a runner anymore?
But so like, talk about that, because like, I think, you know, people, they don't realize that we're human, like runners. It's just like, there's a lot like there. And I think it would be important to like say like what that's like when you just know it's time. When was the moment that you knew it was time to take a break? Why? What's the point? Like running ruts, like.
Yeah, I had been going hard with both the running and the strength training and talking about like prioritizing goals. Like I'd had an ambitious goal of like trying to PR in the mile, and then 3 weeks later do this competition called High Rocks, which is like 5K of running plus 8K of running, 5 miles, plus all these like weight strength-based things in between. And so I did those 2 things. 2 weeks later, I raced a 10K, and I was just kind of like going, and I felt fine, but I was getting run down and I didn't even know it. And at one point my coach reached out and was just like, just checking in, want to make sure you're still motivated, like you're feeling good and everything. She knew how much I was competing and how hard I was pushing myself, because it really does like multiply when you do the running and strength training on top of each other. She was like, how are you doing with the motivation? Like, just want to make sure you're motivated. And I was like, well, you know, I haven't felt great recently, and this and that has been kind of off, but like, I really think I just need to like train harder and like rededicate myself and get back to it. And she's like, why don't you take a week off, you know? And and it really took me like 24 hours sitting with it to be like, I was like, no, I don't need to do that. I need to go harder. Like I need to like rededicate myself to the training and just dial it in more. But she had suggested it, and I really trust my coach, and just the fact that she suggested, I was like, all right, maybe she's right. Like, what's the worst that could happen? You know, I'm not going to lose that much fitness in a week. So I like stopped running, and it was crazy how my body responded to it. Like for a few days, I didn't want to do much at all. Like my body, like it was like put me into like sleep mode.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For like 3-4 days. And then the next week I slowly started building the miles back up. This past week has kind of been the first week I've been back into the flow of training. And like, yeah, it's a little frustrating if my times are like a few seconds slower than they were, but my body feels so much better. And it was having that external person be like, maybe try taking a break. Because I couldn't see it. I was too close to it, you know?
I totally get that. As soon as I finished the Chicago Marathon, I was like, get me a bib for New York, get me a bib for Philly. Like, I'm like, I want to do another marathon next month. Like, I'm going to like ride this, like keep going. And this one coach that he's not my coach, but he's a coach. He's an Olympian. He's a coach on a different team in New York. But I texted him and I was like, yo, can you get me a bib for New York? And he was like, no, don't run New York.
Calm down.
Yeah. He's like, take a second. And I really appreciated it because then I was like, okay, well, if he says it, shout out John Henwood. If he says it, then I am going to take a break. And he's like, he knows I have a problem with taking breaks because that's just a stubborn thing for me. And a lot of runners relate to that. But then luckily, it's kind of like what you said. As soon as I did say, okay, this week after the race, the next couple weeks, actually a good month after the race, I didn't do any track workouts. I ran here and there easy if I felt like it. But then there'd be a couple days I wouldn't run at all. And that was really important because then I could recalibrate and like decide what makes sense. Like, what is the goal for this next marathon? And like, what am I really doing? So that then when I do hit the track, it's with ferocity and I'm like ready to go. And like, we're going to do 800s tomorrow at Tuesday. Are you around tomorrow on Tuesday?
Yeah.
Like, or tomorrow at 7 p.m.
We're doing 800s.
Because hopefully, because I have to do 800s for the Houston Marathon in 7 weeks. But so it's just like having like more of a specific focus and getting that, like, you got to like let things, it's like an oscillation of like, it's got to get really intense and then really chill and then really intense, and like having seasons. It's important to not be always going all out.
Yeah, runners never want to take an off season. And it doesn't have that structure almost, but you need to like take an off season after a big goal race. And if you're like building up to that big goal race and you're racing in between, they can't be like 100% all out efforts.
No.
You need to give yourself that extra little space on top of it.
Totally. Like, I look at 2021, the spring of 2021, I was like track. I was like, I'm going to kill the 10K, kill the 5K. And I did. And that's what I was focusing on. But then after that, I disappeared from racing for a while, for like a year. I really disappeared. And then I started last spring, 2022. So literally a year later, that spring started coming back to track and trying to get back into it. But I had gone so hard for like 4 months at every single race I could possibly do that I needed to just like let it like sink in and like chill and then focus on other stuff. And like sometimes with athleticism or anything fitness related, it's like have other things to like take, so it can be physical for a while, but then it can be cerebral and mental, and then you can focus on that and like passion projects and stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, as a creator, like as a filmmaker, like how does that play in? Like, do you use that as like a balance towards your like physical endeavors, or like how do the two work off of each other?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's important for me to have a creative outlet. And I think running can be so analytical. It can be so like you're trying to optimize this behavior and how you're training. And it can be a really process oriented thing day in, day out. It's important for me to be able to take that space and just kind of like tune it all out and like be creative in this unstructured way where it's not so goal oriented. It's just kind of like taking some time to like let random ideas bounce off each other and see what happens. So definitely there's this like yin and yang element to it, I think. But like at the end of the day, it's also my job. And sometimes it's about like, I have to go out there and actually be like creating content, shooting and doing that all the time as well. So, but that gives me the structure of like, all right, well, I have something else in my life besides just training, you know? Exactly.
It can't just be running all the time. I've noticed that with myself. If it's just running, I get very stressed out. And then suddenly running isn't fun. And I'm like, I got to get back. Running has to always be fun or else I don't want to do it. But that said, I use running as a place to process my life. I'm kind of a hot mess. And I feel like I use running to like process all these whirling emotions inside of me. And so like mental health and running, they go hand in hand for me. And I'm just curious for both of you, like how does mental health play into like your fitness experience, or like do you have like how do you navigate mental health in this wild world we live in?
I mean, that's so funny that you say that. It feels like that with running, because when I run, it doesn't make me mentally unstressed. It's like very stressful and it's so difficult. So I don't feel that way when I run. However, when I stretch, I feel that way.
I see.
And I think that's why I keep doing it. You know what I mean? Ultimately, it's definitely been that thing that I can go to and really just slow down any like racing thoughts in my head. or anything like that. Cause it's just like me breathing deeply in my body in this pose that for a long time might have been like stressful, but somehow I've now found comfort in it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I can imagine the same thing with you in running. It's like, it's obviously uncomfortable, but somehow you're comfortable.
Because it kind of shakes out the stuff that you're already kind of not in pain, but like you're exerting yourself so that like small stuff can't bother you as much because you're just focusing on this one thing. Like I always notice if I'm in a bad mood or I'm really struggling with trying to make a decision, I'm like, okay, well, if I go run, I'll focus on the really important things. Like it like kind of helps me distill what matters and what doesn't matter. And I also know that it takes out that extra energy of like anxiety because I'm just focusing on moving my body. And that's like what kind of keeps me balanced. But I do notice like when I'm the most stressed, my running gets the best. Like
I'm screaming.
Because I'm like, everything in my life is horrible. I'm going to go run 18 miles. Like it's like a way to avoid life in a weird way. But it seems to be working for me. So
oh my God, that's so funny though.
Stressed out.
No, that makes sense. I'm thinking about, I have a really good friend who's also in fitness, Afia. And she it's interesting how we all have like different ways of processing things. Like you're like, I'm gonna go run 18 miles because I have a lot going on, and I'm like, I'm gonna go stretch, and she's like, I'm gonna go like lift 300 pounds on my back and just like beat myself up. But like if I try to lift weight when I'm like stressed, I don't actually like, I'll just cry under the barbell. You know what I mean? Like I'm not like, get yourself through this, you bitch. But like, it's like, with stretching, it's completely different.
That's your outlet. What do you turn to when you're having a mental health crisis?
Ooh, yeah, good question. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why I am a runner. Is because at the end of the day, it's like I know I can go out there, and sometimes like I won't even take my phone. I'm just like literally free. I'm in the wind.
That was me yesterday.
Yeah, and it's so good. That. It's like really, it's a freeing sensation to just be like, because when you start to ramp up that effort, it's like you are in your body. Exactly. Like your body is telling you to be present. Like you're really watching everything that's going on. And so for me, that's like when I become very present in my body, in my environment, but I don't have these outside distractions.
I love that. I actually noticed that with running. So like one thing that we had in common when we met, I was like, oh yeah, you do the OSR races too. And then these are these underground street races, underground unsanctioned crazy street races where you're literally, they're like that you meet on the middle of the bridge in the middle of the 2 a.m. and you're like, ready, set, go. And then you're just going to checkpoints around the city, jumping over barricades, running across into traffic and like hoping you don't get hit by a car. It's wild, but I love it because I'm an adrenaline junkie. But it's something
it's the coolest thing in the world.
It's the coolest thing in the world. And it's like, it's New York. It is literally the most New York thing you could possibly do, running through the Lower East Side in the middle of the night. And so, I mean, I feel like that kind of speaks to the kind of running that I like, of like having the adrenaline and the edge. And even just when you're training around New York City, it's very different. When I was home in St. Louis for Thanksgiving, I would go on a run down the neighborhood, like in the suburbs of St. Louis. And I was like, it just isn't the same stimulus. Whereas like if you're here in New York, you're running through all of these amazing things. You're on the bridge. Like you ran on a run on the bridge the other day. Yeah. Like you're really experiencing the city and soaking it in and seeing the skyline. And you're like, this is why I'm here. And like, I feel like it gives that extra motivation. But that said, what are some of your other favorite things about like running in New York?
That's a good question. Yeah, it's funny you say that. Like we were talking about, like why are we in New York? What's the point of what does this city give us? And it's that energy that no other city can give. The energy that New York has,
it's undeniable.
Like as soon as you come off the Williamsburg Bridge and it dumps you out onto Delancey, it's like I'll see my watch and my miles are like 20 seconds per mile faster.
I know,
and I don't even notice it. You're just like you're going.
It's
like
so true.
And you're racing all the bikes that are next to you, and you're like cutting in front of cars and stuff. But it doesn't feel any harder because you're so in it.
Yeah,
and I love that.
I've definitely noticed too with like, because people are like, oh, you always have to jump in front of people or like jump out of traffic or whatever, and like that navigating. I feel like the navigating is almost makes running easier, or you're more in tune because you're in that like reptilian survival brain of just I have to not get hit. So it keeps you kind of on the edge of your seat versus when you're by yourself in a very safe place where you're not gonna like have to worry about any of that stuff. But yeah, that is what I love about the New York running experience. Have you ever gone to any of these night races?
No, but as someone who's not a runner, I do love running outside.
Yeah.
Like if I had to pick like an activity, a place to run, I like running outside. I like running over the bridge or in the street.
Yeah.
There's something very
Powerful.
empowering and powerful about it.
Definitely.
But still slow, like 2-3 miles max.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
good. Like that's the way that running can be for some people. I always say to people, if it's not, some people running doesn't speak to them, and I'm like, find the thing that does. And for you, it's like you'll do running to maybe complement your strength training or your the other stuff. But like when it gets cold, running outside is not fun.
Yeah. Did you run this winter outside?
I have. I've done it before for sure. I've had to run through snowstorms and stuff, but not this year. I'm gonna go down to Austin for. I'm sure Brendan's told you, but I was like, the first really cold day a few weeks ago. Because I'm training for this marathon that's in January. I just was like, I need to figure something out. So it's a nice day today. It's mild, but I have this whole setup waiting for me in Austin where I'm like, the second it turns just cold enough that I can't go get those miles, and I'm gonna just be like, peace, I'm on a flight, like I'm out of here. So it's kind of like this funny thing that I'm like dancing. I'm like, okay, like New York, I love you so much, I can't abandon you. But the second you piss me off with the weather, I'm out of here. And I'm bringing everyone with me. Like I've been like begging.
No, Brendan's like, I'm going to Austin. I'm like, where?
So I did say to, I was like, talk to Jasmin. I was like, she can come too. Like let's all.
Sweet.
But because I need my people. This is kind of a theme lately in my life is like my people. Of like I need to have my people around me a lot, and I like with like just people who like training partners, friends that know me, and like I feel like this sense of like I need the community to come with me wherever I go, which is not realistic like when I really think about it. But I was just trying to I was telling everybody that I run with, like, guys, let's all go to Austin. We'll train there when it's cold. It's perfect. But
yeah, it does kind of sound great, to be honest.
Right?
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
like,
and
the
like,
thought
so-
of the winter getting colder and colder.
there needs to
Did
be.
you run outside though last winter? That was like a part of what you did?
So I mean, I've been
did?
back into running for 3 years, and I've run 2 winters now. Last year, I really feel like I got my layering game down, which made all of the difference. And there is this kind of like psychological element of like, I'm a badass.
Yeah.
If you're running out there when it's in the teens, like it gives you a little bit of an extra edge, I think, sometimes. Sometimes, but also it's just like generally
Sometimes
miserable.
it's just annoying. Yeah. I totally agree with you. And I've done it too. And I've like gotten it down. But then there's just that when it gets bone chill and your hands are just hurting and you can't even start or stop your watch and you can't move it's just horrible.
There was one workout I did last year where it had snowed. I had to do 400s and the track had like a foot of snow on it. So I was literally like running up and down. I was trying to find blocks that had been plowed, but there was so much snow that like the streets weren't even fully clear.
Oh my
and I put it off a day and they still weren't fully clear. So I was trying to find just like blocks I could run up and down that were clear. And I was like, there would be like snowy patches that I was slipping on. I was just like, this is insane. Like there's no way this is a good workout, but it was, the times may have been garbage and all over the place. I don't even know if I was running 400 meters, but it was like mentally I went out there, I did it. So I was like, at least I got that out of it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like, it's the mental like commitment.
Mm-hmm.
So as we are getting closer to the closing of the show, we have to answer some questions that have been submitted to me on Instagram. And so basically, I'm just gonna hand my phone over to you. Any bold question, you know how this works. Like anything that looks interesting, you can be in charge of the questions that I've been receiving.
Yes. I feel like a lot of power.
Usually Jason, who is not hooked up right now, he's my Q&A person, but
okay.
Whatever stands out. If there's a question that looks like good, you can just freestyles. I know I did like glance at that and I saw a question that was like, can I stay with you when I come to New York? And I'm like, I don't know you.
I'm screaming, nothing wanting to stay with you.
Nothing like wanting to stay with a random person you've never met on Instagram.
This is a good question. Very relevant to the theme of the podcast. How many times a week should a runner strength train?
Oh.
Hey, how about that?
Such a good question. Brendan, go ahead.
I'm gonna say 2 to 3. I think you can fit in like 2 really quality workouts on top of like 2 quality running workouts and a long run, and have it not there's always going to be a period where you're ramping up the strength training that it's going to be hard on your body. It's a stress that your body isn't used to, right? So it's going to take you a while to get to the point where you can do like 2 hard workouts on top of your 2 running workouts and a long run. 2 good workouts, maybe a third that's a little bit more mobility focused, or you're just training some kind of different quality that's not going to interfere with the running as much. But yeah, 2 to 3.
That's about what we've been doing too. Cause like we'll go to the track, and then I also noticed that like you'll have me do like kind of a harder day and then more of a like drills type day. And yeah, I feel like that's like, and I have to say like so we started doing the kettlebell strength work a couple times a week, and I immediately saw some improvement. Like I was like, whoa, it was either because it was activating certain muscles I'd never really thought about before, or just like making me aware, plus the actual strength accumulation or whatever. But it was night and day. And so I'm like, oh, I see why people are saying to do this. And like the beginner gains are real. But.
And nobody asked this, but you should also stretch once a week. You're going to strength train twice. You're going to run, however.
Like a long stretching session.
One long stretching session per week.
That's smart.
Yeah, just one. And then you'll start to like add stuff in your dynamic warm up or your cool down if you do that, but stretch.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Are you ready for question number 2?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. What do you eat before a morning versus evening run? It's a very interesting question.
I'll be curious to hear what Brendan says. What do you have to say?
If I run in the morning, I'm probably going to run like fasted, like not having eaten since dinner the night before. If it's a little bit like, if I have a race in the morning, I'll probably do like a banana and a piece of toast so that I have a little something in my stomach so it's not growling. But like, I don't want a lot of food in there.
Same. That's what I eat very light, if not at all. Like if I'm running in the morning, nothing. And then like otherwise I kind of keep my diet pretty like fruit and vegetable oriented until I want to have my big heavy meal like after I eat. And I want to eat a lot after I run because I feel like there's just something that's like, I don't know. And that's actually like, that's one of the downsides to running at night sometimes is because I want to just like, it's hard to like pace or to time when you eat your meals and stuff. So I try to just get it out over with in the morning when I can still be fasted. But yeah.
Okay. We're moving on. Question 3. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'd love to ask you a question.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people do the fasted run or the fasted weight.
Is it like that with that weight training?
Yeah, I have friends that do. I personally don't. I really like breakfast, like just like maybe like a piece of toast with jam and eggs with like spinach. I don't know. As soon as I get up, I'm like breakfast. Like I get so excited about food.
There are definitely certain body types and like people who like are, I guess it's more like mechanisms, I guess that like that just is what you're supposed to do. And it'll actually stress you out to not. And that like this, I think that there's just like different kinds of people because I've definitely heard this exact thing from like multiple people.
And I actually have a question for you from, it's my podcast now.
I'm all about it.
I recently started reading this book called In the Flow. And this woman's talking about like training and eating in accordance with her 28-day cycle. Is that something that like has ever excited you? Do you do that?
I love that you're asking this question right now. So the Oura Ring I was talking about earlier, like I have this app called Natural Cycles and I have the Oura Ring synced to it, which tells me literally like, sorry boys, the minute I'm ovulating, like, or it's like your cycle is right here at this very moment. Like it tells me, and it literally also says your period's coming now. Like it'll say like your body just spiked a temperature. Like it'll give me a notification.
I love that. And
the other thing, it was synced to my partner's phone too. So then it would say to them, hey, I should say ex-partner. Wah, wah. Anyway, it would say to them like, hey, she's getting her period. Like, watch out. Like it literally would say that. And it was like kind of funny. But I love how it would help me with food cravings because if I knew where I was, then I'd be like, oh, like way more red meat or like, oh, like it definitely like helped me determine if I was having a craving and I would check my cycle, it would make sense. And I'd be like, okay, lean into this because there is something to that. But But yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. I want to read this. So In the Flow.
In the Flow.
That's cool.
Yeah. Alyssa, I think is the first name. Don't know the last
I
name.
want to read it.
Yeah.
So do you have another question?
I got some questions. So there are a couple questions here about like easy pace, running faster at easy pace. What are your thoughts on this? Not just and I think the important thing here is like not just running faster at easy pace, but like how do you make easy pace really easy for somebody?
Okay, so my rule of thumb, easy days easy, hard days hard. You want to keep your easy days painfully easy, like so easy, and then focus on your hard days. The coach I'm working with right now, he loves this too, and he basically has me doing 2 hard days a week where I go all out on my hard days, or not all out, but like pretty close. And that's to really prioritize those sessions, because that's what's going to matter. And you want to give yourself enough energy to be able to do them instead of just kind of going kind of hard all the time and not being able to maximize the really hard days. So I feel like that's been really important. But if you really want to find your pace, the most simple way to put it is whatever your hard day pace is, say it's like a 6-minute mile pace for your tempo run or something, add 3 minutes to that. That's your easy pace. That's what I would say is your easy pace. And if it's slower, good job. That's even better. But then also people will talk about having zone 2, like work your easy day is your zone 2, or like where your heart rate isn't above a zone 2. I think that's good, but sometimes it's hard to know what your heart rate is in the moment if you're going just off of your watch. It's not as like, I think like the way you feel is the best way to gauge it, and just keep it so chill. But what do you think about like paces?
I really like the talk test.
I was going to say that. I like that one.
And if you aren't running with somebody, I'll literally like just speak out loud to myself, because it's New York and everybody talks to
everyone's
themselves.
a little crazy.
But it's a really good way to know, like, if you can speak in complete sentences, that's easy. And even if you start getting a little short of breath, like just back off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a really hard lesson for me to learn. I'm always like, I should be hitting 8-minute pace on my easy days. Your pace doesn't matter. You shouldn't. You honestly, maybe on easy days, shouldn't even wear a watch and find out how long. It's just like,
the best.
maybe time it, maybe go by time, but your distance and pace is completely irrelevant.
Totally. I completely agree with that. And we probably have time for like one more question. How long have you been running, Jay? 52? Okay, cool. So like a question or two.
How you doing, Jay?
All right. What is number 1 tip for improving marathon pace?
I thought it was number 1 tip for improving marriage, and I was like, that question is hurting. No. Marathon pace, tempo, hour pieces. So like I'm not an expert in the marathon. I've only run 2, but honestly, the hour piece is the secret sauce. And we went to the Russian bathhouse the other night with this guy who's a 2:33 marathoner, casual. And he's really big on the hour piece as well, where you just, when you do one of your hard days a week, you do an hour at that goal marathon pace. And I love it. It's such a secret weapon for the marathon. It's like whatever you can do hard for an hour, plus all the volume you do in the rest of the week, that's a good way for getting that marathon pace down. Because like every time you do it, you can get a little bit better. And like, yeah, I think that's a really good secret weapon workout to get that marathon pace faster.
Sweet. I'm going to use it next year.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for the marathon.
So taking us out, Brendan and I are racing on Saturday morning. I don't know if you didn't even sign up yet.
No, but I'm doing it.
He's doing it. So we have this little 15K, which is a really like obscure distance. It's like 9.5 miles. But we're racing on Saturday morning, and I'm excited because it's kind of like a tune-up for me, or like a fitness gauge to see where I'm at. For you, it's kind of like jumping in.
Yeah, I was focused on the mile all summer, and so now like running 9 is going to be so long. But my next big goal race is a half marathon, and so this is like
stepping stone.
It's going to be good for me to see where I'm at, trying to hold that kind of effort for close to a half marathon.
Yeah, I'm really excited, and it's gonna be cold, but so we're racing, and that'll be cool for people to come cheer. I mean, honestly, I want to just race you. I want to see like if we can be. I think we'll be within reach of each other. If we can kind of like hover around.
I heard
Can you
you're
give
faster.
me like a 2-minute head start?
Yeah, I heard you're faster.
Well, it depends. It's like it depends on the distance in the day. I mean, who knows? It's like it's cold. he's fresher than I am because he took that rest week that his coach advised him. But are you going to come?
I didn't even know we were racing, but
yeah, this is a new development.
I was actually
new development.
already, like, just to give you, I was like, okay, well, if Brendan's racing, and then Jasmin will probably go, and maybe she can hold my coat.
Oh my God, I'm
cheering for us at the finish line.
screaming.
I'm like, and maybe she can, like, I don't know, snap a couple photos. So I'm already thinking like you're like the race. You're gonna
race
be our
mom.
the race
Get us
mom.
our content.
You've got it. You've got it.
It's so funny how that's how my mind was working. But anyway, so yeah, how can the Lucie Beatrix podcast audience find you both?
Oh my God. So my Instagram handle, Jasmin, JASMIN _ Monseratte, MONSERRATE.
I'll put that link in the
2 R's,
show
1 T.
notes.
2 R's, 1 T. And then it's the same handle for TikTok if you want to see like me crying.
Yeah, and I'm McCarthy Vision on Instagram and TikTok, and I don't really post a lot on either, but I'll start flooding TikTok with strength training for runners content. So if that's something people are interested in, check it out.
You'll probably find Brendan on mine because I do tag him quite a bit.
Yeah.
But that's because he's been like guiding me through this whole strength journey that I'm on.
Love that for
So we'll have to see how all the strength work gets put to the test on January 15th at my marathon. And yeah, it's going to be interesting because like it's going to be really interesting to see how it all comes together.
No, you're going to crush it. I'm
excited. Hopefully. But that said, you guys are awesome guests. I feel like we could even just go on and talking about everything. We could talk about a lot. So I'm glad that you guys came on the show. You're going to have to come on again. And we'll have to like just have different topics every time. And so until next time, just be fast. Just win.